What's up everyone on YouTube? This is Spark, and in today's video I will be showing you guys how you can make a light attack system or an M1 system. I will explain everything as best as I can. The video will be divided into a few sections and the timestamps for each section will be in the description. So if you're ready, let's get right into the first part, which will be the basic logic of the code. So of course in Roblox Studio we have to deal with both the client side and the server side. We're starting off with the structure of the program's client side, which is the code happening on the user side, meaning the player who's doing the M1s. What you see right now on the screen is a flowchart depicting the basic structure of the client-sided code. This might be a bit difficult to understand, which is why I prepared these charts. Rewind the video if you don't understand it at any point or ask your questions in the comment section down below. So first off, we set some variables such as M1 cooldown, clicked, press time, and new time. M1 cooldown is used to make sure you can't use the M1s for a few seconds once you finish off your M1 combo. Meaning that once I'm done with the fifth M1, you can press the M1 button for a while, it won't work. So that's basically the M1 cooldown. The clicked variable is used to set the minimum delay between each M1. So if someone's pressing extremely fast, there will still be some delay between each M1. The code just won't run if that minimum delay hasn't passed. This is done so that the animations don't overlap. Press time and new time will be used to check the actual delay between each button press done by the user. So the first time I press the left mouse button, it will do the M1 for the first time, of course. So the combo will be 1, right? So if I press it a second time, it will calculate the time between the first press and the second press using these two variables. All of this will be demonstrated in a bit. So now in the code, we will first check if the player has pressed the left mouse button. If the player has pressed left mouse button, then we will move on to the conditions. We will make sure that an M1 is not currently in progress. So of course we don't want the animations to overlap as said before. So we'll first make sure that's not the case, and we will also make sure that the M1s are not on cooldown. If those conditions are fulfilled, then we will move on to the next stage, which is execution of the animation, setting the clicked variable to true so that we know that an M1 is currently in progress, and sending a signal to the server side so that we can cast a hitbox, deal damage and stuff, but more on that later on. So then if the player presses left mouse button again, the code will again detect it, check if the cooldown is false, and check if the clicked variable is false. If both of those are false, then it will do the second M1. The clicked variable is used to set the minimum delay between each M1, as I said before. Now I'll explain press time and new press time a bit more. Both of these variables are used to detect the time between each press of the left mouse button. So if the time is less than 2 seconds, meaning I did the first M1 and then waited for less than 2 seconds and then did the second M1, we will move on to the next attack. But if the time is greater than the second M1, then the M1s will reset and we will go back to the first M1. This will all be the same for the rest of the M1s. The only exceptions are the first M1 and the fifth M1. In the code for the first M1, we don't check for the time between clicks because no click happens before the first M1. The only thing different in fifth M1 is that it will need additional code for added knockback, and we will also be setting the cooldown to true afterwards. Additionally, we will be setting click to true after each M1 so that the next M1 doesn't run until the minimum delay required has passed. Again, all of this might be hard to understand, so rewind the video or ask in the comment section down below. So once you've understood this, we will be moving on to the next section, which is the programming itself. Starting off, we're first gonna need to create the client script. So go in starter player scripts, click on the plus icon and just click on local script. I've already added one here. Name it anything you want. I've named it M1 script. It's gonna have this print, so delete that. So here I've set up some basic variables which are player, character and humanoid. The player is the user who joined the game. The character is of course your own player model. The humanoid is what contains stuff like health, jump power, walk speed, So we might need those later on. Now we will set up the variables needed for the M1 code, which are clicked, press time, new press time, M1 cooldown, and also a remote in order to let the server know when an M1 occurs. Now for the remote, we'll go into replicate storage, create a folder in here named remotes. I've already made one. Add a remote event. I'm gonna name it M1 script remote. So here I've just put the directory for this remote event right here. Now additionally, I'm gonna add another variable here, which will be called combo. I'm gonna set it to 0. This will be used to check which M1 we are currently on. So if you understood the logical part of the code, you will know that we will now check if the user has pressed the left mouse button. So for that, we're gonna need to add a service. This will be used to detect any and all types of inputs. So here we detect whenever the input begins, we check if game processed event is true. If it's true, then this code won't run. And if clicked is false, meaning an M1 is not already in progress and M1s are not on cooldown, then this code can run provided that the user pressed left mouse button. So it's called mouse button 1. So once we're here, now we'll set click to true so that we know that an M1 is now in progress. And we will add 1 to combo. So we're on 0 right now. Let's say I press left mouse button. My character does the first M1, but before that it'll increment combo by 1. So basically that means that we are on the first M1. So that's what this does. Now we will add the code for the first M1. Now here we check if combo is equal to 1, meaning if we're on the first M1. So we're gonna need to run the animation here and send a message to the server through this remote that we have just executed the first M1, and then the hitboxes and stuff will be cast on the server. But for that, of course, we need to first set up the animations. So I have a few animations right here in this dummy. I'm gonna export those and use them for the code. Also make sure your animations have a marker called hit. We will be needing that later on. Copy the ID, go to replicate storage and create a folder for your animations. Create another folder called M1s. Add an animation here, name it 1, and paste the animation ID which you copied earlier. Do the same for the rest of the M1s. So here I've set up my M1 animations. Now we will go in the code. So here we'll set up a table. So once we've set up this table, we can just run the animation here. Play. But before that, we're gonna assign a value to the variable we created earlier, which is press time. So this is where we start measuring the time. Think of it as a stopwatch, which we just started running. So here we created an empty connection and stored this in the connection. Basically, the code here will run when we reach the hit marker which we placed earlier in the animation. So we'll just be using the remote over here to tell the server that the first M1 just happened. We will send combo to it. And that's all the code you need for the first M1. It's just like 6 lines. Now let's actually test it out and I'll show you that it works. It won't do any damage yet though because we haven't added the server side. As you can see, I pressed M1 and it actually played the animation. If I press it again, it won't play it again because like we've set click to true, but we never actually set it to false. So we'll be doing all that later on. Now let's move on to the code for the second, third, and fourth M1. For the second, third, and fourth M1, we can just set the condition to this. We don't have to separately check if the combo is 2 or it's 3 or it's 4. The code for the second, third, and fourth is the same, unlike the first and the fifth one. I'll explain the differences later on once we're done with all the code. We're gonna be assigning a value to new press time. So here we started the stopwatch and here we've ended it. Now we will manually check the time interval between these two. Now if this is the second M1, this is the first, then this is the time between the first and the second press. Now we only want the next M1 to happen if the time is less than 2. So that's the maximum delay between each M1. If it's more than this, then the M1s will just reset and you'll go back to the first one. If it's less, we will again start the stopwatch. Also make sure to disconnect these connections. So here as you can see, I did not enter 2, 3 or 4. Instead I entered combo. The combo has the same value as the M1 which we're on. So which is why this will work. And this basically allows us to minimize the code. We don't have to add separate conditions for the second, third and fourth M1. That would make it too long. Now we've added the code for what happens if the time is less than 2. But if the time is more than 2, we want it to reset. So for that, we're gonna add a function here. So if the time is less than 2, we get the next M1. If it's greater than 2, meaning we delayed it too much, it'll go back to the first M1. So this one right here. The code is of course the same. So now finally we can move on to the final M1. So most of this code is the same, except the fifth M1 will have knockback, but that's for the server side. The different thing for the client side is that we will add the cooldown here. I'm gonna set the cooldown to 5 seconds. M1 cooldown equals false. And that's all the M1's done. Now we just need to make sure that clicked gets set to false after the minimum delay. So whenever this whole code runs, at the end of it, it'll wait for 0.35 seconds. It'll check if clicked is true. and if it's true, it'll set it back to false. So this is what determines the minimum delay between each M1. So like even if someone's pressing left mouse button extremely fast, like with 0.1 second delays, the M1s won't run that fast. They'll run only as fast as the time you've put over here. Make sure it's not too low. Otherwise your animations will overlap and it'll mess up the whole thing. We also have to make sure that we set combo back to 1 every time it's reset. So it's gonna be 0 if we've finished the combo. It's gonna be 1 if we've reset it. And we want to set clicked to false here as well. So now that all that's done, let's test it out. So as you can see, the whole combo string is working. If I delay it too much, it goes back to the first M1. Let's wait, do it again, it goes back. And if I finish the whole combo, I'm clicking and it's not working, it's on cooldown. It works again after 5 seconds. So that's pretty much the whole client side of the code complete. Now we will be moving on to the next section, which is the server side. So now you're gonna wanna go on to server script service, click the plus icon and insert a new script in here. Name it anything you want. I've named it M1 script. So now in order to understand how to start the code on the server side, we first need to understand how we're sending the message to the server in order to initiate it. This is what we've done right here at Fire server. We are sending our player to the server as well as the combo count so that the script knows which combo we're currently on. This is all being done through the M1 remote, which we set up right here. The reason I've only specified combo here is because the player automatically gets sent to the server. Here in the server script, I've already defined the variable for this remote, and now we can get right into the code for the server side. So here we use this remote to check for the message which was sent by the client script right here. And then we connect it to a function. So basically all this code will run when the message is detected. As I said before, the player is automatically sent, so we have to add this argument first. And then we have our combo. So since the player is defined, we use it to obtain the character humanoid as well as the humanoid root part. Here I've defined the parameters which will be used for the hitbox right here. So this is the variable containing the hitbox. It's created in workspace. This right here is the exact position of the hitbox. This is how far it is from our humanoid root part. This is the size of the hitbox. I've set it to 5.5 cube, and these are the parameters which have to be passed here. I defined those earlier. So then once this hitbox is cast, this loop runs. We loop through whatever the hitbox detected. Then we check if the hitbox detected a humanoid root part. And bear in mind, it won't detect the player's own root part. So the one who did the M1, their root part won't be included in this because we added it into the filter descendants instances. So everything under our own character will be ignored. This is so only our own opponent takes the damage. So if we detect a root part, we use it to define the humanoid as well. Then finally here we use the combo count which we passed earlier. If it is anything less than 5, the opponent's humanoid will take 8 damage, and if it's anything else and it can only be 5, if it's not 1 2 3 4, they will take 10 damage and they will also get knocked back. So this is the velocity. They'll be knocked in the direction which the player is facing, and this is the duration of the knockback. It will automatically be deleted after 0.3 seconds. So I made a small mistake here. I passed the player's humanoid instead of the opponent's humanoid. So just change that to your opponent. This is supposed to be less than 5. So now everything should work fine. So as you can see, the dummy took damage, and on the final M1 it took some knockback as well. So this means that our M1s are working fine. Now we're going to be adding a hit animation as well. So I have a hit animation right here. I'm going to be using this one. Just right click on that, save it to Roblox. Go to replicate storage, create a folder named animations. I'm going to store it in here. Paste the ID. Now that that's set up, we're going to create a table over here. So now the animation will run, and while we're at it, let's add a sound effect as well. I have a sound effect right here in SFX. You can get one from Toolbox if you want. Let's define that first. So this is the directory of the SFX. I've cloned it so that it can run multiple times. I've stored it in the opponent, and this is how long the SFX will last. So it will automatically delete itself once it's done running. Now let's test this all out. So as you can see, the animation and sound effects are working fine as well. The M1s are working as well. So now there's just one thing missing from all of this, which is gonna be stun. So I'm not gonna show you how you can add stun in this video. I'm gonna make a separate tutorial on that because I'm gonna be making more videos on the combat system. I'm gonna make a video on heavy attack as well. But make sure to leave your ideas down in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.